Hi, I'm Gary White for Channel 6 Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with Marion County Jailer Barry Brady, and we're going to talk about the jail issue that's going on pretty much all around the state, pretty much around the country potentially as well, but primarily here in Central Kentucky as well. And you've been the jailer for Marion County for how many years now?
15 years.
15 years?
Yes. Actually, Gary, this year here, I'll have 32 years in the prison and jail business, but yeah, I've been the jailer for 15 years, and in that time there's been a lot of change, and I guess the biggest change in the inmate housing has been the drug issues and the level of addiction with hardcore drugs has been the biggest change and a need that's faced us. I mean, we used to years ago think, that alcohol and marijuana were the evil, but they have actually appears now that that's the less of the evils compared to what the cocktails of drugs that are being used now.
Now, let's go back for a second. You said that you've had 32 years in both the jail and prison experience. What's the difference between a jail and a prison? Because we're going to be talking about prisons and jails.
Yeah, prison and jails. Right. Well, your prisons are sentenced felons, and typically that's once they've been, the jails were built to house detainees. Detainee is an individual that's waiting for the court process adjudication to get his sentence, and then he would be processed into a prison. So jails were the meaning temporal need is for until they get them adjudicated, and then once they're final sentenced, then they would go into a prison.
Okay, so when they're in jail, they're waiting for prosecution.
Yeah. Typically, and that's the way it was set up to be. But and then, of course, Kentucky had some issues with population growth in the late '70s and early '80s, and actually, the state went under a dissent decree at the time, and that was a federal dissent decree when we had populations growing so rapidly in the prison that they would double bunk and triple bunk and whatever they had to get these individuals into the prisons and out of the jails. And then conditions of confinement, there was some suits and stuff filed by inmates, and it forced the state at that time in the early '80s to address the overcrowding in the prisons. And actually that would have been the primary time that was the birth of privatization, an agreement with the state getting into privatization and venturing for places to put inmates. At the time, the tax base and the capital means to build prisons was probably not the quickest option that they had to answer to that federal dissent decree. At the same time, that was some of the birth too of county government getting into business with, or assisting the state in holding more prisoners in jail. So the law changed, and not actually changed, but they wrote a law to say that Class D felons may be housed in county jails, and this was done in the '80s. So that kind of lifted some of the burden too for the state once they went into privatization, and then they was doing some business with county jails, leaving some of the sentenced prisoners there because of the language may. And then we evolved all the way up into the '90s, and at that point legislators changed the word may to shall. And at that point it made it a mandate that all Class D felons are to be housed in county jails. County jail population, Gary, has just continued to grow and build, and a lot of that was a benefit and has been a benefit to county governments to actually have some possibility to raise some revenue to offset the construction cost and housing fee of the jails. But at the same time is that population, like from 2010, we built over 10,000 jail beds, new beds, and we're still building new beds. So the purpose of a prison being for sentenced prisoners kind of went away with the population growth and some of that things.
So a jail has evolved to now some of the people who are here have been here for have been prosecuted and are here.
Yeah,
for
they're
their term.
they're sentence felons, and that's you look at the setup of the state. We have 12 prisons, and that makes up close to 13,000 beds. Those beds are full today. They are full plus a little bit, and right now today we have over 20,000 jail beds. But we're holding 24,000 plus in county jails across our state. So when they you know, the news, the media, the reports, and you hear legislators talking about the overcrowding issues, the bulk and all of that remains at the county level. I mean, the prisons are full, the county jails are overfull. They are above capacity, what their design capacity is, and it's growing.
Nearly 20%.
Yeah, and we're growing such at a rapid pace, and it's you know, we've had legislation that come into effect to try to offset the growth or stabilize the growth of the population and answer to the needs of the offender by alternative sentencing measures. But nonetheless, we're just not. I mean, it's just growing so fast we can't keep up with it.
Now, we talked about that before, where I know a few years ago there was legislation that was thought was going to help address the issue, which was occurring then as well with overcrowding and what have you, or the prosecution of felons at that time, right? What was that legislation and how effective was it?
Well, I think what we were thinking of is, I'm not sure if it was a Senate bill, House Bill 463, and there was, and actually there was probably, I mean, there was some effect from it when it first went in, and but again, the overbearing epidemic with drug use just overpowered it and pushed through.
So the drugs so we're talking about, we have about 24,088 prisoners currently in jail beds.
Yes.
What it says, right? And about 13,000 people in prisons around the state of Kentucky. Of those individuals, that 37,088 people, what percentage do you think are there because of some kind of drug issue?
Almost every one of your charges are going to be related. Even your charges of burglary, robbery, and violence, that you'll find it'll stem back to some sort of substance abuse or under the influence when the charge occurred. So it's high, and I too, Gary, when we was talking earlier when we started about you know, what it was like 15, 20, 30 years ago in jails and prisons. The cocktail of these drugs have changed, addiction, and we're learning more as we go along about the power of addiction and how difficult it is to overcome. I mean, we are, you know, you would hope that with the programs we got, and we are being somewhat effective and helping individuals break those vices, but at the same time, there are some that when more we learn about addiction, the more we learn how difficult it is to break this cycle for a lot of individuals.
So the majority of all these individuals have harkened back to drugs of some sort. How many, what would you say, are repeat offenders?
I mean,
is that a high number?
It's going to be a high number as well. But I mean, if you look right now, like the current population, we've got 3,600 controlled intakes housed in the jail. So it's almost what the overcrowding, and the controlled intake is an individual that has been charged, but he's went through the adjudication process and he has been issued his sentence, but he's not classified. So in classification would be that they would look at the charge, look at the history, look at the background. They would do recommendations of what type of programs or what's the best suited housing for that individual during his incarceration. So these controlled intakes are the ones that are unclassified that remain in the jail. So that would take up a lot of that need to go into the prison. Out of that 3,600, like I said earlier, only about 83 of them are actually were presumptively going to classify to stay in a jail. And out of the 3,600, 2,200 of those are new charges. We're seeing probably a third of them are parole violators and having issues at return.
Okay. So we were saying that Marion County, at present, you have how many beds?
We have 297 beds.
And how many individuals have you had in the most recent count?
We run 300 plus, and the makeup of the jail. I mean, of course, we have been very fortunate. Marion County has led the way in being proactive and trying to get programs and work with individuals so that they can stabilize their life and conquer these vices of drug addiction. But right now, today, I've got probably 18 or so that are sleeping on what you call stack of bunks in the bed. Mm-hmm. I mean, on the floors. I'm running what the state average across the jails at 120%. Even with that, we have facilities geographically in the state jails that are running over 137%. Some of them as much as 200% in population, and those facilities. I mean, it affects the conditions of confinement, the effectiveness of what you're doing with the individual, and it removes any type of, my personal opinion, of any rehabilitative factor when you're warehousing them that deep.
Yeah. Now we talked about some programs, and I think that legislation that you were talking about from a few years ago, there was a lot of emphasis on programs or
Yes,
funding
sir.
for
Yes.
programs as well. And I know over the years that we've talked a lot about various different programs that Marion County has tried to implement and has been successful in
Yes.
a lot of them. What are some of those programs? What are they focusing on addiction, or
Well,
what's their focus?
there's a large portion, Gary, of course, that's going to be substance abuse. It's called the SAP program, and the basic curriculum of all of those programs are similar. Even though the models may operate just a slight different from facility to facility. Marion County is the largest jail SAP program, has the largest jail SAP program in the state. We're at 128 beds of substance abuse. Now, we had worked on our lower custody housing side. This is individuals mostly the public would see that's working with the dog pounds, the animal shelter, or the park. Yeah, kind of doing some of our public works type jobs and stuff. Those individuals we started years ago working with cognitive thinking type classes and stuff, and trying to, in an essence, once some of the individuals that completed the substance abuse, they would move over into this arena and kind of work on their selves, the way they think and stuff. So that's been partially funded by Marion County and partially funded by the state. Last year we evolved that program to a reentry model, which doesn't have work tied to it other than government work, but it focuses still on the cognitive thinking, but it also focuses on building the support and stuff needed with families, building resumes, and attentively preparing them to go to the street. So right now I'm at 208 beds of the 300 are evidence-based program beds. So again, I mean, we do a very good forward job for the state on what we do with programs.
So when you say that 208 of the 300 beds, approximately, are program beds, are they specifically assigned when they get their sentence? Are they sentenced to go into a program and that's how they end up here, or do they come here and then enter a program?
Well, a little bit of both, Gary. A little bit of both. Some of them go through, are classified, and once they're classified, if they're at other facilities, we move inmates every month from all over the state. We're in Western Kentucky, Southeast, Eastern Kentucky, picking up inmates, bringing them back to programs, and these programs are with integrity, legitimate, and they're when I say that, it's not the easiest. The individual that's in the program has to be committed. To be successful. So there's at times that you have individuals that are unsuccessful in completing it, and then they have to step down for a 30-day period, and then they can reapply, and then they go back into the list on wherever the rotation is. So we have inmates, even locals, that were housed here, sentenced here, got their time, and then participated in the program. And then we have individuals from across the state as well. So it's kind of a blend of both.
Okay. And then the rest of the beds that you're talking about are just individuals?
General population is what general population. And that's, male, female population. I have there's only 2 jails in the state of Kentucky that have contracts with the U.S. military, and that's Christian County and Marion County. We've had that for some time, but it's not a heavy population, but we do contract military, we contract with the U.S. Marshals, and we contract the next biggest portion would be the state, and we also contract for our neighboring county, Washington County. Mm-hmm. So we house their inmates as well until they're adjudicated. And
part of the issue, again, with the drugs is that over the last 5 years, the population for Marion County inmates has gone up about 53%, I think you're saying, correct?
Most definitely. And
you have to house them first?
No, we have to house them first. That's the jail is here to serve Marion County. And when one thing we've done in collecting the data, and actually, one thing, it's taking the data and studying it and trying to understand, what's going on with what your trends are. And it's very easy. You look at Marion County's trends, and we've grown 53% of what we was housing 5 years ago. Our populations went up that much. And then when we look at the charge base, that was 51% of that was drug-related charges. So when those numbers increase, Gary, then it pushes we were so fortunate for so many years to have these extra beds that we would sell out to our contracts, whether it be to the U.S. Marshals, the military, state. Those when the Marion County count continues to increase, then that pushes those other us ability to sell those other beds. You get to a point that it's a safe. You've got to focus on a safe, secure environment, and I right now. 119% capacity in that general population it's not nothing we want every day, but we work with what we can to do the job.
Now, speaking of that, with the funding, the jail at one point was funding itself,
yes.
Correct? Operating on its own revenue.
Yes, exactly.
Because you get revenue from these various other agencies pay.
Yes.
In order to, and then the only ones here who do not pay are Marion County?
Marion County is the only contract here, of course. They do. Physical court does. When they do transfers into the budget to offset our shortfalls on our revenues, then it ends up. But yes, we were the county so very blessed. We had a track record of 7 back-to-back years of absolutely no assistance from the court, and then we had some very good years, even past that were partially funded, and then as most of our anything since the downfall of the economy and stuff, the cost of incarceration continues to increase. So as the cost increased, and then we are seeing our population in our county increase. Our ability to generate revenue was pushed down. One thing about this business, Gary, is that every day or every week that we lose the opportunity to generate that revenue, you can't. I mean, it's not like an industry that you're going to work overtime to pick up your production to try to catch up.
Right.
Once that opportunity has passed to make that revenue, then it's passed. You'll just linger with the onset of it.
Now, also, we talked, so obviously the Marion County Jail is run by the county.
Yes.
And the 73 jails around are all county?
Yeah, there's actually 73 full-service jails across the state.
That are county
run, yes.
So the 12 prisons, are they operated by the state?
Yeah, there's 12 prisons operated by the state right now.
Okay. Now, we have talked recently as well that there used to be a prison, a private-run prison in Marion County, Marion Adjustment Center.
Yes.
That closed about almost 4 years ago.
Yes.
Right. And there's the potential for that reopening.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, they have, the state signed the first agreement with CCA, now Core Civic, back last month or so. And that
they're the owners of the
same owners of the Marion Adjustment Center. So the first contract is they've given out is for Lee County,
which they also own,
which is on its way in the development stage of getting open. And from the conversations that I've had with some folks in the state and with Core Civic individuals is that they're planning on somewhere around March to hope to have Lee County open. And then they will, immediately they'll follow up with negotiations on opening up Otter Creek and Marion Adjustment Center. But Gary,
and that's privatization.
Private
jails,
private prisons, private prisons
contracted with the state.
Yeah. So, but if you look at today, what the private prison could offer the state, it's about 1,900 beds. And we, even with what I guess even with opening the private prisons, we will still be beyond the capacity of what we can hold in the state of Kentucky.
So if they were to open all three of those facilities,
it would only have a little effect on the population. I mean, because at the same time, the state is struggling with the infrastructure of their current prisons, the 12 prisons, and some of those facilities have gotten age, a lot of age, and wear and tear on them, and so it's just it's a burden that we're hit with as taxpayers. That is, it's something it's a necessary expense we're going to have to address and face.
Has there ever been any study done to kind of determine what causes individuals to become criminals? Are you aware?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what would be specific. I mean, it's going to be. I mean, the majority of what we're dealing with and what we're seeing on right now is, it's substance abuse. I mean, people getting lost up in the world of addiction, and we've done a lot of great things and a lot of good things for the trying to stabilize that population and be effective with getting people, in situations to make them whole again. Reunite the families, make a productive neighbor, a citizen, and a person for themselves. But it's growing so rapidly with the drug issue is what personally what I would address. Yes.
So there's also something with Senate Bill 120 that is being discussed. Correct?
Yes. Well, Senate Bill 120 actually was passed last legislative session. It will allow for county governments, being county jails, to open reentry centers. This model will consist of a few things, Gary, and it's kind of like we're really trying to make sure that we connect the dots and do what's best for these individuals that are leaving incarceration, so that we can have we can have a better effect on recidivism and the people returning. So it's a reentry model that typically where you see someone that would be incarcerated, they would do their term of sentence. We were speaking earlier about the legislation. You know, some of it is even individuals that getting closer to their serve-out date. The state has released them 6 months, 8 months early. Well, this reentry model would have individuals leaving out of the incarceration to a community corrections unit that would consist of treatment, education, and work. So what you'll see is individuals that are, leaving the jail and prison environment, going into these reentry centers, and next thing you know, they will be our workforce, the workforce that fills the jobs that are in our communities across our state. And the thought process is that we will use the model in a way that we continue the treatment. We apply the vocational education components, and work at the same time. One thing happens with incarceration, especially long-term incarceration, is individuals. There's some brokenness there, but at the same time, there's other I guess the difficulties for the family keeping up. So the individual will have an opportunity to work, pay for a portion of his incarceration, and obtain some skill, a good job, possibly, hopefully, and continue treatment. But he won't hit the street broke, so that he's looking for his friends and family to help him to purchase a transportation or set up the rental for an apartment. So that's some thought process in that.
Okay. And you're going to have a visitor soon, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, actually, Secretary Ramsey from the Labor Department, his office reached out to us last week. They're going to plan coming next week. So that's exciting because I feel that this visit is, I think Secretary Ramsey and in Frankfurt, they're committed to trying to reunite these individuals that are leaving prison and jails into our workforce, and making that effective transition. And what's exciting is Gary, they could have went to a lot of counties, jails across the state of Kentucky, and Secretary, I was totally pleased and happy when they called and asked us that they have selected Marion County to come down and look and see what we're doing with the programs and what our thoughts and process with that. So I'm very excited about that visit.
Great. Well, again, I've been talking with Marion County Jailer Barry Brady, and the jail overcrowding is an issue that, do you believe it's hit its peak yet?
We would hope it's at its peak, but after the conversation this past week with Secretary John Tilley, he spoke with the legislators and kind of thought that we would see even more between now and 2019.
So we'll keep you up to date on what's going on with that. This has been Gary White with Channel 6 on Kentucky Television.